with a friend of mine and her family for several years. Like things, and then I just kind of lost interest.
I mean, I've had season tickets for 40 plus years.
40? I just had them for about 4. Started having to go.
We're going to go ahead and call this November 9th, 2021 City of Gallatin Council Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Fennell,
Here.
Councilman Alexander, Councilman Fan,
Here.
Councilwoman George,
Here.
Councilman Hayes,
Here.
Councilwoman Love,
Here.
and Councilman Overton. Here. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have the approval of the minutes for the October 26th Council Committee meeting.
Motion to.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, this time, we're going to do public recognition. Anybody from the public would like to speak, please come up and give your name, address for the record. Anybody?
My name is Joe Debord, and I live at 1007 Hart Street here in Gallatin, Tennessee. I rise tonight as a lifetime member of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. I have been working on little projects here in the city about our streets, widening and the proper maintenance thereof of our streets. But we have an opportunity coming before us now that we need to take a look at. Seems as though this past week in Washington, D.C., somebody got off the schneid and is going to give us some infrastructure opportunities. And I hope we get our name in the pot, because we desperately need to have 840 around the north side of our metro area. And I would like this august body to endorse that full-heartedly, because we need that for our people going to and from work, etc. In the scheme of things, you always have to have a bypass around a large metropolitan area. And for those of us who drive from Nashville into Gallatin every evening, they get a good dose of why we should have that road built. Because we need to have the bypass around town so those trucks won't be sitting there in line, one after another in a parking lot, basically, small parking lot. So this is why we need to get our name in the pot with regard to that issue. And for one who has been out there on that road, beating her head in the top and her butt on the seat, it would behoove us to look a little ahead and see if we can't get something done with regard to that issue. Another issue, the other part of that is we have to be more efficient. And that will be because of the fact that people say that 109 is our beltway on the north side. Part of it anyway. That is totally and utterly ridiculous. And the reason why it's ridiculous is every time that truck or car stops at a stoplight, somebody's losing money, period. They let the money go. The federal boys need to step up to the plate and pay the bills, because, folks, every truck out there pays $550 every year to put on these roads. Every truck. We're not talking about the taxes as far as for fuel tax and all that. We're just talking about flat out $550. So we need to get that money and have it here in our neighborhood to make it safer for our people to get back and forth to work. And we all want to do that because Mr. Fenton back here does a good job of bringing people in here as far as industrial and stuff like that. They're not going to all live in Sumner County. and they need to have a way to get there. So with that being said, I bid you adieu.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, this time public recognition is closed. Let's see, mayor's comments.
Do something? Okay, there it goes. I couldn't get my microphone on. I thought Mr. Hayes has been messing with it. First of all, I want to say happy birthday, Susan Hamacali. She's with us this evening, and she should be out celebrating, but we're glad she's here. A couple of things I do want to say. A big thank you to Northfield, who celebrated their ribbon cutting for their Sumner Center last Sunday. Quite the facility they built there with a lot of great services for the citizens of our community. I know Ms. George was there. I know they appreciated us being there. But very, very, very impressive, and look forward to the services they're going to provide. Also want to thank the American Legion for the Veterans Day Parade last weekend. I was not here for that, but you gentlemen were, and I heard it went well, and that quite a few people attended and were cheering along the route. So you say no?
It wasn't very well attended.
Well,
but
that's sad.
There was a lot of people in it, but there wasn't many people on the streets watching it, so.
After downtown was, but after you pulled out from there, it wasn't.
Well, there seemed to be a lot last year, but they've had years where they had nobody and years where they had a lot of people. So if you didn't make the Veterans Day Parade, please make sure to recognize the veterans that you know or see or remember on this coming Thursday on Veterans Day. This weekend, the annual Tinsel and Treasures Holiday Open House is happening on Saturday and Sunday. Merchants around town, I believe there's 24 participating merchants. This is the 50th year of that. So quite a grand Gallatin tradition, and would certainly welcome everyone to celebrate that. Also, this Thursday evening is the Gallatin Artisan Crawl happening at the TD Gallery. This Friday, the Merry Moonlight Market at the Gallatin Farmers Market. That's from 6 till 9. That's sponsored by the Gallatin Chamber. It is a holiday-themed Merry Market to kick off the holiday Tinsel and Treasure weekend. This Saturday is the Gallatin Gobble Turkey Shoot happening at the Civic Center grounds. That is sponsored by our local manufacturer, Beretta. Also happening this weekend is the Beretta pop-up sale, where you can go to the Gallatin Civic Center on Saturday and purchase some of Beretta's fine goods at greatly discounted prices. There are no guns for sale, but lots of clothing and lots of accessories. And on this Sunday is the Miracle Park VIP Special Friends Day from 1 until 3 p.m. And then just for you to put on your calendar for next week, the Christmas Harvest Craft Show. That would conclude my remarks this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Now we'll move on to the agenda. Item number 1, Resolution R2111-79, designating Juneteenth and Columbus Day as official holidays for municipal government employees and amending Personnel Rule 16-1.
Ms. Flood's coming up to speak to that, but, this was something that I mentioned to you all a few weeks back. I think it's a benefit that we can offer to our employees when we are struggling to retain and attract employees. This is in line with the county, although the county still gets more days because they take election days and certainly other federal institutions. But we will still get more than private sector that just takes federal holidays, because we get the day after Thanksgiving and the day after Christmas Eve. So just, that would be what we would have in the way of paid holidays for our employees, if you all are supportive of this.
Your motion?
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carries. Thank you, Connie. All right, item number 2, Resolution R211-80, amending Personnel Rule 15, Employee Development and Training.
With that one, council asked us to take a look and revisit it, and we did. We had some review, we had some meetings. Susan and I worked close hand in hand trying to figure out the best way to move it forward. And this morning we had a meeting, or in our department head, we discussed it. Did you want to go over the changes, or do you want me to move them into how you did it this morning, Susan? What's your thoughts? Do you want to look at the timeline first?
I don't know that we need to go through the whole timeline. I can, if you want me to go over the revisions, or if you want to go over the revisions. Like Connie said, we were asked to look at this rule, and we did that. We had meetings, and council had been questioning why we weren't collecting. And so I specifically looked at the rule to see how we could strengthen it and to develop a process that would help our departments, help HR, and then help my department if we are asked to file a lawsuit to collect. And I will advise that, you know, to date, since I've been here, my office has never been asked to do that. I think we do need to do a better job on the front end of advising our employees when they come in to our employment of the significant investment that we make in them. And so we've put a new process in where they have to acknowledge those expenses and affirm that they will reimburse us. So I handed out to each of you tonight, each of the council members, a timeline that I put together for the employees from date of hire for an employee until they leave. There is a new training reimbursement agreement. There's a specialized training expense acknowledgement and reimbursement agreement. And the same for certifications and PPE, specialized PPE. And then the very last agreement I have is a reimbursement schedule agreement that kind of lays out how they're going to reimburse us. And we're hoping that we will get most of these signed before the employee leaves our employment. And that should help us in collecting. You can look at all those agreements later, but I wanted to make you aware of those. I'll briefly go through Rule 15 on 15.1 and 15.2. I just made changes there that updated our policy that brought into line with our current practices. 15.3 is safety education and training and personal protective equipment reimbursement. And most of that did not change except when you get down into C and D. And C and D are going to be repeated, this process in the other two rules. But basically for PPE, there are only certain employees that can be actually in public safety, where the departments get specialized PPE for these employees that cannot be reused when they leave employment. And they will be signing an acknowledgement that they receive that, the cost of that, and acknowledging that if they leave our employment within 3 years for any reason other than permanent disability or death, that they are required to reimburse the city for that. The reimbursement is to be made within 6 months, 6 months after separation from service, unless a longer period is approved by the mayor. The reimbursement may be made in a lump sum, in full, or pursuant to a payment plan. The payment plan is going to be set forth in that reimbursement schedule agreement that I've just handed out to you. And that agreement's to be executed within 30 days of separation, but our goal is for the HR director to meet with each employee who's separating, who has a reimbursement obligation, to advise them of that and remind them of that. And our hope is also by making our employees aware on the front end of the significant expense that we are contributing to them, that will help them when they are trying to make a decision if they're going to leave us, to know whether it's going to be cost effective for them to do so, because they're going to be reminded that they do have a reimbursement obligation. That has not been done in the past. In exceptional circumstances, the department head may request and the mayor may grant a waiver of the reimbursement requirement, but that has to be done all in writing. And then if you go down into D, the department head is responsible for documenting the expenses that are subject to reimbursement. The employees are going to sign an expense acknowledgement and reimbursement agreement, and that will lay out all of those costs, as you'll see in those forms. Once a department has noticed that employee is separating from service who has a reimbursement obligation under the rules, the department head must notify the personnel official as soon as possible, but in no event later than 2 business days. HR will then immediately begin reimbursement efforts with the separating employee. If they don't get that schedule done within 30 days, that agreement, and don't start collecting, then they will be forwarding to the city attorney's office and we will begin collection efforts. And if we have collection efforts, it's in all of our agreements that the employee has to acknowledge they are responsible for those costs. 15.4 is specialized training, and all of the requirements that I just listed in that one are the same. The specialized training is not for, and as it's set out here, it's not for attendance at conferences, seminars, or any kind of continuing education that employee has to have for their current position. This is when the employee is getting some type of specialized training, most notably in police and fire departments, also sometimes in utilities, codes, and other departments, where we're giving additional training that is expensive for our employees, like the Police and Fire Academy. Those are the types of expenses that are required to be reimbursed under the rule. You can read the rest of the rule. Most of that hasn't changed. It's just been fine-tuned. And then for 15-5 is the certification license reimbursement program, and has the same procedures that we've already identified. And this is not for any type of course that a department pays for someone to keep a current active, a current license or certification active. This is where we are paying for new certifications or a new license that's to help with a promotion. But we also know that makes employees more marketable, and a lot of times that they may take our training and then they leave employment. And so if they do so, they will be required to reimburse the city. One other thing I'll say is we did specify in this rule that the city will not pay for repeat training for courses or programs. If an employee isn't successful on an exam, any follow-up courses will be at the employee's expense.
Susan, one question. This is not on no sliding scale reimbursement. This is if you don't stay 3 years, you reimburse us, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Hear a motion? Is there a second? All right, any discussion on this? Anybody? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Connie. All right, item number 3, 2022 City Council meeting and work session dates. Mayor?
Yes, that just shows you what we plan to advertise as our meeting dates next year. Wanted to see if you all thought they were okay, if you had any conflicts with any of them, related to their, proximity to a holiday or anything like that.
No.
Yeah, it's in the, yeah, it's
Yeah.
on that. It's all, it's every second and fourth Tuesday for council meetings,
Yeah.
except November 22nd and 27th, and
Where did it go? I had it. It's just that it doesn't change really.
council meetings except for the 20th of December, so.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to send
Have a
on.
motion? Mr.
July
Pinelli.
4th is on a Monday. I want you to be aware of that.
And a second by Councilwoman George. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed, motion carries. All right, item number 4, Second Amendment Resolution temporarily adjusting certain rates of pay. Ms. Nichols.
We brought this resolution to you a couple of weeks ago to adjust certain rates of pay for a short time frame, not a short time frame, until the salary study's done. And the motion was to move everyone in these job classes the equivalent of 4 steps on the pay scale. We have some employees that are higher up on the scale, and there's not 4 steps for them to take. For those, we took them to the highest grade available, but we did have a handful of employees who are already topped out, and therefore they would receive nothing with this adjustment. So we have added a sentence in here that for persons who have already obtained step 18 of the pay scale, they would receive a 2.5% adjustment. Again, in order to treat everyone in those positions fairly, we thought that would.
And we had discussed that plan when we had talked to the department heads about it, but we failed to communicate that when we talked to you all about it. So that's why.
Have a motion by Councilman Overton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Fennell. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
I have to abstain, by the way.
Okay, have 1 abstention. All right, Bill McCord, item number 5, ordinance 0211-70, rezoning 10.72 acres from the PB P Planned Business Park District to the Multiple Residential and Office District and approval of a preliminary master development plan for Oxford Station Phase 4.
Okay, Bill McCord, city planner. This one's got a little twist to it, so a little different than some of the other ones that we've presented. But this is a request for rezoning a little over a 10-acre piece of property located on the south side of Vietnam Vets Boulevard, west of Offutt Drive and the Oxford Station Townhome development. It is bisected by Liberty Branch. It's currently zoned planned business park, and the applicant is requesting to change the zoning to MRO with a master development plan for Oxford Station Phase 4. This is the location of the property, and you can see from this, and unfortunately, I don't think, yeah, the cursor here works on the wall, but it doesn't work on the screen. But it's adjacent to Oxford Station phases 1 through 3 now, that it's immediately to the east, and portions have been constructed and are inhabited, and portions are still under construction. It is bounded on the south basically by Liberty Branch, and of course then Highway 386 on the west. The applicant wants to acquire this property. It's a triangle-shaped piece of property, and the southerly portion there, bisected by the black line that you can see in the screen that kind of zigzags back and forth, is the floodplain line. So anything south of there won't be developed and or inhabited with any structures. But the applicant then wants to continue part of their existing development for the townhomes. These are be owner-occupied homes, and extend their street, their private street, off of the street that currently exists in the current Oxford Station, and again, plat additional units. There would be stormwater facility down near the cul-de-sac. Lots would back up to the freeway, but there would be a buffer there, and of course, there's a substantial buffer where the creek is. It also would provide an extension of the greenway. They won't actually be constructing the greenway, but they will eventually, as they move through the development process, provide appropriate easements to do their part of the greenway, and we've done property owners in this quarter. Again, there's a map that shows, or drawing that shows where the buffer yards would be. There are trees that are adjacent to the highway right-of-way, and they would be filling those in where necessary to comply with the buffer yard standards. They're proposing, again, 51 units in this addition. Again, it is adjacent to this property. It does require rezoning. Now, the property just to the northeast, which is top right of the screen, north of the existing townhome development, is zone PGC, Planned General Commercial, and we have a developer who's interested in developing that for a use that would fit within that zoning. This property, being planned business park, is somewhat isolated from the other planned business park properties. And one thing that I want you to bring your attention is that we've had some other properties being rezoned not too long ago to the south of here to MU, and have developed with residential uses as well, as was the original Oxford Station plan. So this is an isolated piece that if it remains PBP, there are a lot of uses in PBP zoning that might not be conducive to this area. This is our gateway to the community, and the possibilities that warehouses of various types can be constructed in this area is probably not something that the council, or we think, would, at least at the planning commission, or excuse me, the planning department, thinks is appropriate. Now, I want you to know, and the thing I was telling you at the beginning, is there a little twist to this, is because the planning commission did review this, and as requested by EDA, did not recommend approval of the zoning change. So this is rare that we have this, that the planning department doesn't see it the same way as the planning commission. But given the history of the development of properties, particularly in this immediate area, and some other issues that you will see here shortly, that we think it's appropriate to allow this property to be rezoned and approve this master development plan. So that's the crux of this presentation is there is a split recommendation, so.
You agree, you want it, and the planning commission doesn't, is what you're saying?
That's right. We recommended for the zoning change and the master development plan, and the planning commission did not recommend for that. Jane, at the request of EDA, the PBP zoning.
The reason that it failed from the planning commission was that they're switching out the business plan that city council approved at this later date. And planning commission didn't like the fact that they were coming back and making changes. So it's a different developer.
Yeah, let me also point out, and I'm not sure whether you're leading there, but this property was originally, and this and other properties in this area originally were zoned planned business park shortly after the annexation of all this area took place in 2008. And what was unique about that is that unlike other zonings in this area, that planned business park normally would require a master plan at the time that the zoning was established, but that didn't occur with this and many other properties in this immediate vicinity. So it was almost a holding pattern that was established. Now, I will mention that there are, and I'll mention this with another project that's coming down the pike here in just a couple of item numbers, is that an interesting thing that I heard yesterday at the presentation by the Commissioner of Economic and Community Development. He was talking about the changes of the strategies that office is taking over the years to promote economic development. And the big points that I took away from that is that a few years ago, they were promoting incentives for development. Then they transitioned to workforce development, and they're still on that. But now they're transferring to livability. So this area here, similar to what you have in Hendersonville around Indian Lakes, Interchange, and so forth, is a mixed-use type environment. PBP zoning, yes, it might allow for things like you have in Franklin with large office buildings adjacent to the freeway and things of that sort. But that is really a big box surrounded by a parking lot. And that's really not a promotion of the gateway to Gallatin, is that you have a big parking lot with a big box that people come and go to, as opposed to an more interactive area that I would think that would be appropriate for this important interchange in Gallatin. This is a big difference between perhaps what the planning department is endorsing versus what the planning commission may endorse. So this will come up again in another item.
What if it's a really cool multifaceted box with lots of ponds and landscaping and? I said, what if it's a really cool multifaceted box with lots of landscaping and ponds and?
Well, they'll have ponds, they'll have to have detention basins, so.
Landscaping.
All of them will require landscaping and buffer yards, so.
Susan?
I don't normally interject in these, but because Councilwoman Love made a comment, I did want to clarify something. I listened to the planning meeting that night. Latasha Alexander from my office was there on behalf of my department. And I think there was a comment that was made that night that perhaps led the Planning Commission to believe it was the same developer that came in and asked for PBP that is now coming in and asked for it to be changed. And that's not accurate. It's two different developers. And so this is just like any other rezoning. It's not, and so I do think there was a statement made that night that led the Planning Commission to believe that the same developer had now changed their mind and they're coming in to change this, but that was not accurate.
No, I took it, because I was listening as well, I took it as the perception that they had come in and pitched a plan based upon this mixed use, if you will, development, and then they were taking out what we view as a highly desirable piece of that mixed use. That's how I viewed what was being presented. So.
Well, that may more apply to another application that we'll be discussing later as opposed to this one. The applicant representative is here tonight, and if it's appropriate, he would like to speak on the proposal.
Anybody else have anything up here?
Bill, I just want to be assured if this moves on and gets approved, that this does back up to 386, and they're gonna make it where it's not seen by 386, or we're gonna have lots of brick and a lot of pretty things on it, correct?
There will be the buffer zone that you see here on this screen here, and it will be, there'll probably be the front of the building, because this will be a backloaded type project. So you won't see any garages, for example, and a bunch of cars parked out in the garages. You'll see.
So if that back part's backing up to 386, we're gonna screen it real heavily, and it's also gonna have nice-looking brick and stuff on it, correct?
Right, they have, the architecture that they're requesting is identical to the architecture you see portion they've already built.
Okay.
So the landscaping will meet at least the minimum landscaping required by the zoning code.
I think any houses along the bypass need to be buffered because it is
I agree
just,
too.
nobody, not so much as having seen them from the bypass, but imagine
well, that's
living
why I'm
there
asking.
and the
Not just-
bypass being your backyard. I
And
mean,
not the minimum, they need to do maximum.
That's why I'm asking this
plus,
question. I think we need to go a little bit extra on this because it is the gateway coming in. I just think that it needs to be where you're not gonna be able to see it a lot, but
Can we get
I'm
the
okay to
applicant to
suspend
come
the
up here?
rules and let the applicant come talk.
Just, if he can come up here and brief us on, about that, real quick.
But in the meantime, what we're deciding on is to take out some commercial buildings that I think Gallatin would really be benefited by, and adding in more townhomes.
Can you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Josh Gulick, and I'm work with Los Design, and my address is 7636 Younger Creek Road in Prim Springs. So I wrote things down tonight, and I just want to thank you all, council members, for your service and letting us talk about our project. I want to first say that there was some confusion during the last meeting, and I've written a formal statement, just to make sure that I include everything that I need to, just to kind of help eliminate the confusion and hopefully answer any questions specifically about the architecture and the buffering that has been spoken about. So I want to talk about the zoning. I'm going to talk a little bit about the characteristics of the site. But I also want to address our status is not recommended first. We believe this is the right project for this property. We have accepted all the conditions of planning staff who have been very helpful in supporting us through this process. We attended the Planning Commission workshop and answered questions about buffers and access to the site we received, and no indications that this project was in any way out of line with the Planning Commission's desire to continue and enhance the character of Gallatin. That is until we got to the vote for the evening. We didn't realize there was some confusion and potentially misunderstanding about the builder of this project's ties to the owner of the adjacent property to the northeast, proposing a U-Haul facility. I am here to assure you that there is no affiliation, and the current property owner of this parcel is not the same as the property owner proposing the U-Haul facility to the northeast. This project is not only zoned differently, but there's simply no relation between the plans and the owners for this property. I also wanted to assure council that in no way does this plan go against the overall zoning intent of the PVP. In other words, changing this zoning is not an attack on PVP zoning itself. Changing this zoning, in fact, supports and strengthens the future for PVP in other areas. As Section 9 of the code states, PVP is intended to be campus-like development that has a minimum total acreage of 10 acres and a lot areas of 3 acres. This site does not have the usable area of 3 acres, and by our calculations, it's only about 2.5 acres when we really start looking at the buildings and the flat nature of the parking lots and facilities that will go on this. There's only one access point to an adjacent zoning, and that zoning is not PVP. And in the code, it specifically says that these PVP properties are to have this campus-like feel and connect to each other. The closest PVP is on the other side of Liberty Branch. If you connect to that existing property across Liberty Branch, you've got to go through about 300 to 400 linear feet of floodplain and through about 60 feet of stream buffer in order to make this relate to that adjacent PBP. And I don't think the intent of the PBP zoning is to really turn our backs on environmental considerations and what's really good for the city of Gallatin, which is what will be to the letter of the code if we connect these two zoning pieces together. The character of the land itself does not lend itself to large buildings and large parking lots. There is a 45-foot vertical drop from the top of the triangle down to the stream. And in the usable space of the 2.5 acres that we've identified, there's a 22-foot vertical drop between the top of that triangle and the bottom. As we all know, large buildings have a very singular finished floor elevation, and parking lots can only be a 3.5% slope across the entirety. A large building on this site is not only appropriate because of access and community character, but because of natural character and vertical constraints. A residential development, as we're proposing, not only allows us to step the buildings and slope the road with the grade, but allows us to add amenities, connections to existing residential, and use the floodplain and stream to enhance the character of the new community and existing residents. We're able to give and have committed to an additional 15-foot landscape buffer along 386. And we're committing to upgrade the plant sizes in the required buffer. We're going from a 6-foot minimum evergreen in the required buffer along 386 to an 8 to 10-foot evergreen, for instance. We're also committed to changing the hardy board material to brick on the rear-facing buildings to 386. We've also given portions of the property to greenway easements for trail connections to the community and to enable future connections to other greenway extensions, specifically beneath 386 where the bridge goes over Liberty Branch. We want to be a good neighbor, and we believe that our proposed residential development by a local builder with a sterling track record is the direction this triangular, floodplain enhanced piece of property supports. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody have any questions? Not, I'll entertain a motion. Is there a motion or anything? We have a motion. Motion.
I'm still confused about, it was zoned, planned business park as a part of the larger development? Is that what the deal is? And then this was parceled off?
Section of it.
Is that how this situation came to be?
You have in front of you a color-coded zoning map, which may indicate what's occurred over history. So you can see the site here that's in the circle. So what happened is that back in 2008 or right after, the if you will, or holding pattern or whatever, for whatever reason, PBP zoning was put out there because the intent, I guess, assume at that time was that they were going to attract these office parks or possibly warehouse parks that could accommodate such as a warehouse park like you have on 840 if you wanted to go that route, or a business park like you have in Franklin where the Nissan campus and so forth is. So that PBP zoning is pretty broad that allows for that type of thing. But what's happened over the last 10 years or more is that zonings have changed in this immediate area, including the property to the east, which changed that from PBP and I think it was a little bit PGC to this MRO, which they're requesting. You have MU across the road where the Hunter Point apartments and the retail is going in. And then you have this little portion of PGC here where the gas station, the Twice Daily, and the vacant piece of property across the street from that is. You still have some PBP in the interior of the area to the east, and in the time being, to the south and west. Now, I will let you know, of course, as I'm alluded to already, is that there's a request to change a substantial portion of that PBP. So we're surrendering PBP here, and we're also, as recommended by the Planning Commission, surrendering even a larger piece of PBP beside the freeway immediately to the southwest of this site. So, again, this area is transitioning because there was no master plan put with it. A large portion, like the Chandler Park Apartments and all that, that's changed as well. So it's whittled away. The property that was Patriot Angels, or is Patriot Angels, has also been changed. So there's still a substantial portion of PBP to the east, south of Long Hollow Pike, and on the west side of the East Fork at Camp Creek, where the Offutt Drive extension would be extended through to Belvedere.
Out, Mayor.
I move to send it on.
Have a motion to send it on. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Have a second by Councilman Alexander. Any further discussion?
Isn't this right where we, is it twice daily? It's where Long Hollow comes on
Yes.
to under
Back in the
386.
book.
So we're gonna add 51 more units there, right there, by doing this. I just feel like there's enough traffic and enough residential in that area already.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Item number 6. Bill, this must be you too.
Okay. Just gotta be a little patient with the machine now. Okay, this next item is a request for rezoning for what's called Monday Rogers Road. And the request is for rezoning from the R15 Medium Density Residential District to the R15 PRD Medium Density Residential District with a preliminary master development plan. The applicant intends to rezone about 4 acres of property. It's in the East Mead subdivision now, which is an older subdivision off of Parksville Pike, essentially between the hospital and the MAPCO station out on Parksville Pike at Cairo Road. And it abuts the CSX Railroad, the spur line out there. And what the applicant wants to do is rezone this property. It's not much of a very substantial rezoning, but rezoning it to allow for new lots to be platted in this southwest corner. Now, some of you may have remembered the Woodbury subdivision, which is the one just to the east of this site here. And that was done, of course, well after the East Mead subdivision, but it's very similar to that. So they'd be extending a small street off of just Rogers Road, and extending down to a cul-de-sac. Now, there is a intermittent creek or drainage way that extends through the property, and that would be kept in open space. So a substantial portion of this property would be left open and undeveloped on the south side of the creek between there and the railroad, and provide a sufficient buffer. And then you would have these lots that are smaller than the R15 lots, but with the open space, there's essentially, it's a equal trade-off there, and similar to was done over in the Woodbury subdivision. So just a few lots here. There'll be some common open space, and they'll have a homeowner association to take care of that area. The Planning Commission did review this request and recommended approval. And you do have a draft ordinance there that we're recommending as well.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion send it on.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on this item?
It's come out of planning, was it 100%?
Yeah, I think so.
I believe it was, yes, on this one.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 7, Mr. McCord.
Okay, this one's a little interesting as well, as I'd mentioned before. Advance this to the beginning. Oop, okay. This is a request to rezone a piece of property that's now zoned planned business commercial, PBP, similar to the other property that you just reviewed. Planned general commercial, and parts of it are already zoned MU. So here's the current zoning on the property, and it's located on the east side of Greenlee Boulevard, the kind of the southeast side of Vietnam Vets, Highway 386, and on the north side of Harris Lane. Immediately to the south and east there, you see the little pattern there is the new Chandler Park Phase 2 apartment complex. And then, of course, to the west is the Goodview Properties, commercial development there, with offices and restaurants and so forth. And then across the freeway is the Job Center and New Dollar General as well. But the applicant is requesting to rezone this property from Planned Business Park initially to, and what they're requesting is MU zoning, mixed-use zoning. So it has the PGC, it already has some that's mixed use, and then the bulk of it is PGC, which would go to mixed use as well. This would be basically the boundary lines and the differences in the zonings that they would request. They're going to MU. This is a proposal, let me clarify. This is a proposal that was put forth by EDA as an alternative for consideration, as opposed to just going MU, which was the applicant's initial request in the application that came in. So this is an alternative zoning plan, which would establish MU in the blue there on the north portion, which would accommodate apartments, and then the area that's in, I guess, pink, that would be zone PGC, Planned General Commercial, with some limitations on it. Now, they have offered to limit certain Planned General Commercial uses in that area shown in pink, which would essentially exclude automotive-related uses. It would also exclude automotive parking as a principal use, not as obviously an accessory use. Limited warehousing, which is essentially mini warehousing, vehicular craft and related equipment sales, which is auto and boat sales lots, things like that. Automotive servicing, automotive repair and cleaning. So those activities would be excluded from the PGC district. The MU district would then be maintained as for multifamily. The master development plan that they show corresponds with that proposed rezoning. And in the southerly or southwesterly portion there, you'll see a mix of commercial structures, including a service station, convenience store with gas pumps on the immediate corner of Harris Lane and Greenlee Boulevard, and then a variety of office buildings and or retail stores that would occupy essentially out parcels for various, it's unclear at this point whether it be platted or not, or retained as one large parcel. But you see a variety of non-residential type uses. And then to the north would be the multifamily development complex on about 26 acres. The commercial would be on the 17 acres in the southwest portion, which means about 60% of this property would be for multifamily at about 10.35 units per acre. The applicant initially proposed to rezone the 38 acres from PBP to mixed and PGC to mixed use with essentially the same master development plan. Now, there are some uses that are allowed in PGC zoning that are not allowed in MU zoning, and those are generally a little more intensive uses, and I can go over those if you would like me to identify what those are. I just want you to know that they're more intensive uses, even though they've taken some of the more higher intensive automotive related uses out. So again, EDA had advised that maybe consideration for either an SP plan or in this case the PGC be applied to that southerly portion of the property, but the northerly portion would remain mixed use with the same master development plan. Our recommendation at the planning department, as I mentioned before with the previous item, was to go with the split zoning, the MU zoning on the whole property with one master development plan, and some restrictions tied to that, including, again, more of what you're seeing at Indian Lake Village as opposed to what you're seeing with a strip center type of thing. There would be a substantial amount of parking with either one of these, though, and we're, of course, then endorsing the MU zoning on the north end. Again, you're losing a lot of PBP, so the argument that we're losing PBP and we got to retain PBP is not used in this rezoning right across the creek. So I want you to be aware of that. So, but the planning department is recommending approval of a zoning change to MU with the master development plan. The planning commission went with a recommendation from the Economic Development Agency, which would establish PGC with limited uses and mixed use on the north end.
So we're talking a lot of apartments up there?
Yes, we are. We're talking, let me get the total amount of apartments. Oh, I forgot what it was here. It's in the report. I just forgot to read it out.
266 units, I think.
66, yeah. And there's about 400, with Chandler Park, Phase 2 and Phase 1, there's about 444.
Bill, will these be just like the ones that they're building over there now that's under construction? Will they be with the garages and as nice as they are right now?
Yes, sir. These would be
High-end
limited to two-story, and they would look just like the ones that are built in Phase 2 on the north side of Harris Lane.
I'll just say, I believe Planning Commission voted to approve this. I had the understanding that we were changing that northern part to PGC when we voted for this.
No, because the multifamily is not allowed in PGC.
Well, I mean, keeping the MU, the multifamily, but then to the north, changing it to PGC.
If I may.
I think that's what we were discussing it that night.
Can we hear from Mr. Fenton?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And this, again, James Fenton with Economic Development. This is a similar consternation to the one we just talked about, losing the PBP. In this one, we did, as you can hear, the applicant took a lot of those uses out that we didn't feel really was appropriate in that position. We also got a guarantee that at least one hotel would start coming up out of the ground as soon as the rest of it is. And the fact, you know, we're trying to create revenue for this city, and as with demand that's out there and apartments being taxed at 40%, just like commercial, I mean, it is going to add more revenue to the community than might have been previously. We did ask for PGC. We wanted to make sure that those no more apartments could encroach on this. We wanted to make sure that there was a solid line in the sand right there, so that there couldn't be someone coming back and saying, well, we want to do this, just like has happened at several of the developments that we've had here in the community. So that was, there were extensive conversations with these folks, and at this point in time, EDA is supportive of this.
Is what?
Supportive.
This plan?
Yes.
Even with the apartments?
Yes.
So what isn't what this plan is right now, all multifamily? No. Because I thought that's what Bill said that they recommended.
Let me clarify. The northerly 25 acres, either way, would be for multifamily. It's the southerly or the southwesterly 14 to 17 acres, whatever, that would be changed either to a mixed use with this preliminary master development plan or PGC with this same master development plan. And the restrictions, there were some restrictions that are included in the ordinance that you have. What we have in here is an attachment that has the resolution, which is the recommendation from the Planning Commission with various restrictions. And so the ordinance that is provided for at the beginning of your agenda package has the restrictions as well that it would apply consistent with those that are not already covered by either the MU zoning. So
James, can I
that's
ask
very
you-
confusing, but there are restrictions. For example, there would be buildings that would be placed along Greenlee Boulevard up closer to the road, so you don't have this big parking lot in the front.
Ask you another question, James. You said something about, and I know you said you're for this, but you said something about we're getting too many rooftops. Well, what about the apartments? I mean, that's a ton of ton of people coming in right there.
Correct,
So-
correct. And clearly, I mean,
What's
as
the
you
difference, I
know,
guess?
in your industry, you're watching, I mean, the demand is there. This helps concentrate these people instead of spread them out, and that makes better use of our land. It's again, more revenue for us. And again, the way we went into this conversation was just to make sure that there was commercial, that it was going to be developed, and it could not be changed. And that was our trade-off on this one, sir.
Are we able to say that we want the hotel built first?
Yes,
And do they have to comply with that?
yes. I mean, we cannot issue them other permits until that's starting to come up out of the ground.
And the developer's here if you want to talk to him. Andy, can you come up a minute?
Thank you all. Good evening. I'm Marty Cook. I represent the applicant, the developer, and there's not a whole lot to add here, but just a couple of things that we were trying to accomplish here. Under the current zoning, that MU, which would allow for apartments, is up on the front part of this, the intersection there with Harris Lane and Greenlee. And so one of the objectives that we were trying to accomplish here is to put the commercial on that front intersection area, the more valuable, more visible space, and to flip the zoning and put the residential portion on the back where it can tie in with the existing residential that's already there. So that's one goal that we were trying to accomplish. The second was, in working with Mr. Fenton and the EDA, was to be sensitive to his concerns that, you know, they did not want us to present a plan that showed commercial and then later on some other developer come in and try to get what was shown as commercial rezoned for residential. So we wanted to be sensitive to that. We wanted to protect that and wanted to protect the city. And so in doing that, we offered a couple of alternatives. One, as Mr. Overton said, we have offered to make sure that the hotel is the first thing built. We will commit to that. The developers agreed to commit to that. So you all could make that a condition of the approval. And second, we worked through several options with EDA and ultimately landed on this split zoning of making that front portion PGC so that if anybody ever wanted to make that residential, they would have to come back through the process and have that completely rezoned. So it is our hope that that's a fair compromise, that protects that front most valuable portion of this property to be commercial, and that it will always be commercial. And certainly the developer is willing to move that commercial side along first, and then the back would be the residential, which we feel like would complement that commercial portion as well and tie in with the existing very attractive residential units that are already there. So I'll let.
Let me ask you, Marty, let me ask you a question. You said that the zoning on the front right now, it is currently MU, right?
Correct.
On that current zoning, how many acres is that right there? How many units could go right there? If you're flipping it, how many units could go right there?
I don't know the exact answer to that.
Because you said 200 and something in the back.
I think it's about 4 acres, and you could get up to close to 15 units an acre.
Repeat that again, how many?
Do the math for me. What's that? That's what? So, well, actually, we're going from like, what, 90 units to 256 units, I guess? I mean, we're increasing quite a bit, right?
266. Jeff's got control. Okay, let's go and get the map back out. Okay, that little, the pink
Yeah, I mean, so
strip is the MU right now.
Yeah,
Or,
that's-
excuse me, the PGC right now. The MU is in the blue on the south.
Yeah. So basically, 90 units to 256?
66.
66.
That's a big jump.
But I think the trade-off for that too is that you're moving the more valuable, more visible commercial up to the front and then hiding the residential more in the back. So that's part of that trade-off.
Get that, but they're still benefiting from that majorly by doing that.
Let me also add, so there's not some concern about that, is if you go with the MU zoning with this master plan, someone wants to come in and say, well, I want multifamily on the south portion. You're not obligated to give them that with the master plan amendment. So you can retain whatever commercial which is shown on their master plan here without having to rezone or change the master plan to put residential in there. So either way, if you don't have to go PGC and you can still get the same product here with the MU zoning.
Anybody got anything else? Anybody want to hear from anybody else? Anybody? Motion, anything?
What was the vote in the planning commission, Mr. McCoy?
Planning Commission resolution was to go with the PGC zoning on the south end and the MU on the north end.
How was it passed? How many votes?
I believe it was unanimous.
Unanimous.
Is there a motion?
I move we move it on.
Motion by Councilwoman George. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Overton.
And I'm okay with putting in an amendment to that we do start the hotel.
Guess we can add that next week.
Yeah, we can.
Any other discussion? Anything else? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mr. McCord, last one for the night. Number 8.
Well, you're not getting rid of me that quick. This one's a little easier and less controversial, hopefully. This is a request for the city to apply for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant with the TDOT to construct a segment of the Vol State Gap Trail Greenway, which will extend from Kennesaw Boulevard down, essentially following the creek down through Kennesaw down to Thorn Boulevard, which is down at Highway 31. So this would be about $1 million project, we estimate at this time, and we need to make application by December the 1st. And this will, again, be another critical segment. We are going to have a public meeting, which is required by applying for the grant on the 15th at 4:30 here, right before the Planning Commission meeting. So find out a little bit more about it, or I can describe that now.
Motion to send it on.
I have a motion. Is there a second? My second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, ordinance, let's see, number 9, David Brown.
Yeah, this is an ordinance to transfer some money from insurance recovery over back to the budget so we can get the things repaired.
Motion approved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 10, Mr. Tuttle? Not Mr. Tuttle, but that's all right.
Aaron Hickson, Engineering Division. Item 10 is a resolution to accept the public improvements for the Liberty Creek subdivision, which includes Griffin Lane and Hopkins Lane. This was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission.
Motion approved.
Have a motion by Councilman Alexander, second by Councilman Overton. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. 11, September financial reports. Ms. Nichols.
Before the meeting, I handed out the financial reports for September. So far this year, things are looking good. Also wanted to mention that since the Albert Gallatin project is winding down, and that tax revenues are already coming in, even though tax bills haven't gone out yet, I'm going to go ahead and close that 2019 grant anticipation note. y'all approve that just in case our cash flow got tight with the state reimbursing us on the Albert Gallatin project, but we've never had to draw against it, and I'm gonna go ahead and close that out. And the last page is our sales tax collection, which continues to be really high, relatively speaking. We've had 6 months in a row where we've collected over $1 million, and that's outstanding for us. We are being cautious that, watching to see if supply disruption causes any kind of blips, but so far, things are looking good.
And when we pass that, everybody give us a hard time, we're going to raise taxes and everything else to pay for it, so, good job, Rachel.
Hope it stays that way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. All right, anybody up here have any other business? Right side, left side, anybody? Nobody. Department heads, y'all have anything? Oh. I should have. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys.
We could be like some other communities in the state where they just beg for business, but, okay, a couple of items I need to get some approvals from. One, the first one is a request to waive the site plan review fee for the new public utilities water tank over there near Enoch Hills off Hartsville Pike. State statute requires that all those public improvements be approved by the planning commission, so that will be a formal plan that, like we've done for many of them.
Motion approved.
Have a motion, Councilman Alexander. Any motion, any second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
The next item I have is the report on the of our Urban Growth Coordinating Committee. They had a meeting on Thursday night up in Portland. It was their second public meeting, and they approved or recommended approval of the changes to the urban growth boundary for not only Gallatin, but many other communities in the county, which also changes the county's urban growth boundaries in rural set-aside areas. And so now that it's gone through that process, it returns back to the cities for ratification of a resolution which will adopt those boundaries, and every city will be entertaining the same or similar resolution to do that. And we didn't have time to put together a formal report before this committee, but and we've got some really strange dates here. We have a council meeting on the 16th, and then we have one on the 7th of December, I believe. Maybe a council committee meeting on the 14th of December. I don't know if that one's still going to happen or not. But if you want to move forward with the consideration of the resolution to adopt those changes, and then we can send them back to the county, we can have it on, I guess, the December 7th council meeting. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, all right. That'd be
So just to remind you, we're adjusting our urban growth boundary to include a lot of the Ocana community, including the new schools that are under construction out there, and swapping a little bit of area on the west side of the railroad tracks out there at the near Chutes Lane. That's basically the changes. And then, as I mentioned previously, I just want to remind you that on the 15th at 4:30 here, we have that meeting on the trail extension that y'all approved us applying for. So, oh, and the Braves won the World Series. Everybody remember that?
All right. Any other department heads? Entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion.
Second.
Second. We're adjourned.